Welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. This is the show that focuses on climbing the mountain of fatherhood together. Our mission is to help fathers be present by sharing valuable ideas and concepts that will equip men to be the best father possible. Being a good father is hard work, but it is so vitally important. We believe that dads matter, and that's why this podcast is for you. So gear up, dads, and get ready. It's time to start climbing.
And welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. I'm joined today with Justin and his beautiful wife, Ainsley. She is a pediatric dentist. And then we are also joined by Dustin. Unfortunately, George cannot make it tonight, so we're going to just kind of jump into it. But before we do, I just want to say a quick disclaimer for the advice that we're giving tonight. None of it is medical advice or professional advice. So just take this with a grain of salt. It's just based on our personal experiences. And we're very excited to have this episode for new dads and dads who are expecting to become dads. So we're going to kick it off. We're going to start with Justin and Ainsley. So tell us a little bit about how your week's been, and let's get started.
You want to go? There you go. Okay. So I have been drinking from a fire hose at work. I am outrageously busy, but it's a good busy. And then on top of that, we're, trying to do our thing here at the house and prep for, the holidays because it's going to be madness. So it's been an interesting week to say the least, but things are going good. Ainsley's been pretty busy, right?
Pretty busy, yeah. Work's been good, very busy. Slowed down a little bit since school kind of got back into high gear, which has been a nice kind of slow down, but I guess busy's a good problem, so you can't really complain much.
Absolutely. Dustin, tell us about your week, man.
It's been good. Just got out of the pool with little man. He's swimming up a storm, which is awesome. Caught up with an old friend from college I hadn't seen in a couple of years. And so that was really cool to see him. So I had a really good day.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. The jet lag is finally gone from the trip to Germany. So feeling back in the swing of things.
Yeah, man.
Taking the great Icelandic air.
Yeah. The Icelanders. Yeah. Yeah.
Call your boy Elon.
Yeah.
Twitter it up.
Get her fired. Exactly. Yeah. Oh my
there
gosh. Yeah. Yeah. So if you're above 6 feet tall, don't fly coach on international flights. Just throwing that out there. Because inevitably there will be two giant dudes, one to your left, one to your right, and they will squeeze you in really tight and you will have a tough flight. Don't do it. Just upgrade it, get a better seat, and your back will thank you very much. So that is medical advice. Do not fly middle seat if you are above 6 feet tall and you're flying Icelandair, because they're big people, right? They're Icelanders, and there's I'm all like
they're big
the whole time for like 8 hours. I know they don't care. Just
Well, you're a big dude too, so
exactly.
Yeah. Duly noted. All right. Well, my week has been pretty busy. Finally got some integration stuff done at work. Work's going great. Loving everything there. Kids are healthy. We're wrapping up on our fall session of soccer until the springtime. So that's going to make us a little less busy during the week. So we're going to kind of catch up and keep above water, get a couple of breaths of air, and everything's going great though. We're super blessed. So I'm excited about this episode. We're going to be covering a lot of different things about just tips and tricks on how to prepare for fatherhood, or if you're just a new dad, things that might make your quality of life a little bit better and your spouse's quality of life. So it's going to be real important for some of the things that we go over. And again, Justin and Ainsley are going to start us off here. And then, Dustin and I will have a couple of things we kind of want to interject there. But other than that, let's go ahead and get started, Justin.
Sure. So sorry, we got a gnat somewhere in the house. It's kind of weird. If you see me get slapped, she's not abusive, I promise. Well, she is Cajun. You piss her off enough, maybe. I'll come on with a black eye one day. So we're going to kind of start off. Do you guys want to talk about our birth experiences first, since each of our wives kind of had something going on? So our birth experience was interesting, to say the least.
Talked about it before too.
Yeah, and I've spoke about it a little, but it's, you go in there, and the best thing and advice I could give you as a new father or a father to be, don't go in with expectations, because everyone's going to hype it up. They're going to tell you, hey, it's the best moment of your life. It's this, it's that. And it could be the complete opposite. So don't set yourself up for failure. Just kind of be ready and expect the worst, because we're going to cover some things too here that are in these books that we're going to talk about what you can do for your spouse, how to speak up for your spouse, because women, when they're giving birth, they're either drugged out of their mind and incoherent, which I can attest to, or they are in so much duress and stress that they can't think properly. So I think it's always good to kind of have a birthing plan. And that's one of the things that's covered under this, because ours did not go as planned. It was pretty interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit about what happened, or do you want me to tell the story?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. So in a nutshell, Ainsley was actually a few days past our due date.
Mhm.
And Bennett was a very, very big boy. He wasn't fat by any means, but he was pretty stout little guy. He was just wide, very large. Yeah, very, very, yeah, little linebacker, to say the least. Everyone kept saying, he's a solid baby. He's a solid baby. Yeah, he had to put that cookie down for sure. Well, Ainsley actually should. But all joking aside, he didn't have really any fat on him, but he was 8 pounds and 10 ounces. So he was a big dude. He's 21.
He is a big boy.
21 inches.
And he never came down. He never really dropped. And he stayed in the same position throughout the entire pregnancy. His head was down, and his legs were over in her ribs and stuff. But
we did the whole induction process too, which was a little rough, I guess you can say. I kind of went in there like ready for it, wanting it. Let's get this show on the road. And it is a little bit more intense, I guess, if you can say, like all the contractions and the Pitocin pushing and stuff like that. It just really is a little bit more intense than I was really prepared for. But yeah, I guess like kind of how Justin was saying, just really being open to a lot of different potential outcomes. I was very open, thankfully, because things even went more south than what I was thinking they were going to go. But from the start, I know it's a very controversial kind of topic. A lot of women are like really, really adamant about they want to push, they want to go natural, whether that means epidural or not, but they're not really open to the opportunity or the potential of having to get a section or anything like that. So fortunately, my sister had a section. She had 2 sections and they went really well. So it's kind of, in the doctor's hands, whatever is right, whatever you think, let's roll with it. And so that really kind of helped both of us a lot, just saying like, do what you need to do when the time's right, let's roll.
Sure.
But things still kind of went south on top of that. But being just as hard as it is to say, but being calm and kind of giving up that control, which is very hard for me. You can ask him. I'm a control freak in all aspects of life. But in that, to me, it was like me getting stressed or me getting worried or me trying to control how the birth was going to happen was only going to make everybody else more hectic and more fuzzy minded than just kind of being like, do what is safe, do what you would do if it were your wife or your family or that. So although it was a kind of rocky delivery, I mean, it was perfect in what it needed to be. And Bennett came out absolutely fantastic.
We had great staff, and the doctor that delivered Bennett was the doctor that delivered her and her sister. And he's,
oh, wow. That's so cool.
I can't say enough good things about him. I'm not going to say his name, obviously, but the one thing I would say is speak up. And this is something Brandon and Dustin can attest to. If you feel something's not right, say something. Because I'm glad that we got the epidural when we did. Had we not got it, Ainsley would have had to have been intubated and put under, and it could have created a lot more problems than what happened. And they took her, running down, they're ripping jewelry off her. They're doing everything they can to get her to the OR as quickly as possible because she was having such bad contractions at one point. She was about to pass out. And they scale it on a machine. And from what the nurse was saying, she was having some pretty intense ones, but you can see it was a struggle. And so anyways, long story short, they got her to the OR, everything went okay, but ask for that epidural or whatever you need to get yourself comfortable, or get your wife comfortable, excuse me. Because if you don't, and you pass that threshold, you can't get an epidural after some points. So definitely speak up. If the wife says, I want an epidural, make sure it happens. Don't back down until it does.
Because it does take a little while as well, which Dustin can probably attest to.
Yeah, I was gonna say Dustin.
Yeah, that's not like, so there's still a window to put a spinal in. You wouldn't be able to put an epidural in, but you can still put a spinal in. So we do a lot of emergent spinals. There is a certain point where the baby's going to die in 30 seconds. We have to intubate you, but that's really rare. 99% of the time, we can still keep you awake, do a quick spinal, and get you, taken care of.
Well, I think that was what was our issue, was they were waiting to potentially do the spinal, thinking that we were going to do a C-section. And then once they called epidural, it took another hour and a half for the anesthesiologist to get there to give the epidural. So then it was just like boom, 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 epidural, OR. We might have to spinal on top of this. We might have to intubate. It was just a little, it was weird. It was a little bit different than anything that I've ever heard or experienced. But just put the trust in someone else. Like, you have enough to worry about on your plate. Being a mother in this situation, being a father, just trust. I feel like that's the only thing I could really say that really helped me get through it.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it was hectic, to say the least, but yeah. Dustin, I'll let you kind of talk. I know you had a hell of an experience.
We did. Yeah. So Kim had something called a placental abruption, which is a pretty scary situation, where the placenta is basically removed too quickly from the baby. And that can lead to the death of the mother and the baby very quickly. So in her case, same as you, Ainsley, she already had an epidural in place. So they dropped some lidocaine in, works in about 10 minutes, and they were able to get her going very quickly. But she had a hemoglobin of 7, super, super low. So they almost had a transfuser. It was just a horrific experience. Lucas came out super blue for a couple minutes. So I was thinking, he's going to be disabled. Like, it was a pretty scary situation. But it's incredible how resilient kids are. If it had been 100 years ago, my wife and child would have both been dead, 100%. So I'm very thankful to the medical community and the advances we've made, that I still have them today. I 100%, they're the reason that, they're still around. So if you have any questions about, having a birth at home versus, having a good backup plan for getting to a hospital, get a good backup plan for getting to the hospital. You'd probably be okay, but it's why would you gamble with that? It just doesn't seem worth it. So home birthing is wonderful. If the experience goes well, it's probably vastly superior, to the experience that we all had in the hospital. But just make sure there's a plan to get to a good hospital with a good obstetrician. And that being said, most OBGYN groups have anywhere from 3 to 10 different doctors that work in the group. You may fall in love with your doctor. He or she may be excellent, but there's a good chance that they won't be the one there when you birth the baby or when you have a C-section. So make sure that you vet the other doctors in the group and that you would be okay with any of them birthing your wife's baby. Because
a really good point.
There's a good chance that your obstetrician will be there, but they can't work 24/7. Sure. So if your baby decides to come at 3 a.m. and they're not the person on call, you're not getting your preferred doctor. So it is what it is. But as a dad, there's a lot you can do. It makes a big difference. First of all, be there. If you've got a girlfriend you knocked up or something, or you're not sure if she wants you there, be there. Find a way to get there, because that's super, super important for her to have, you in her corner. You can imagine how scary it is, to do this, even with the assistance of all the staff and dad there. If you are not sure you should be there because you're not sure about the status of the relationship, try to be there. It's worth it. If there's any chance of saving that relationship, of you having a good relationship with your children, guarantee you, if you're not there, that mom is going to let you. She's going to remind you of that every single time. Yeah. So, if you have to work, you're in the wrong state, find a way to get there.
Absolutely.
You knocked her up, you owe her that.
Some women will even say they don't want you there. And, short of you being an abusive crackhead, be there, absolutely. Because you would be surprised how many people would show up to something and have messed up a lot in their life, but you show up and do the right thing, and it changes you, and it changes them and their perspective of you, and it can really
and you
change a
cannot
lot.
do it alone.
No, being
Right.
alone,
It's hard.
Yeah.
Well, I think that goes back to the fact the whole premise of this podcast is that presence matters. You're devoting the most important currency that any human being has, which is your time.
Yeah.
Because you can't get it back, and it's not refundable. So that to me, just all these stories tells me that as a dad, you have to make sure that one, you're prepared communication wise with your wife or your girlfriend. I mean, you have to make sure that you're on the same page with them. So communicate with each other beforehand. That way you have a plan, what your wife wants in the case of any situation that comes up during the pregnancy or the birthing process. So like my wife, she knows that I'm always going to be very articulate and very attentive to everything that she's dealing with. So like one of the things I was doing was when Summer was having our kids, I'd make sure she had water. I'd make sure she had a cool cloth for her head. I'd tell her she's doing great and give her some emotional and mental and encouragement. And then the other thing I was doing when I was looking at her blood pressure, like with Bayla, we noticed that her blood pressure was dropping and the alarm was actually going off. And we actually there was a lot of bursts going on all at once. So we didn't have anybody being attentive to that. And I rushed out and actually told a nurse, hey, I need y'all to double check this. And they came rushing back, gave her medicine, and it stopped her from going into cardiac arrest. So, I don't say that to scare people, but I say that to make dads just make sure that you're vigilant and that you're attentive to your wife's needs and to her situation, because like Dustin was saying, you did the easy part. And the most important part is you showing up. And
it was the
being there
hard
for
part.
her.
Just it was the hard part.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so stories aside, just have a plan, and your wife will have a plan, and most times OBGYNs will come up with a really good thorough plan with the wife, but you need to communicate with her to make sure that you have that plan aligned with yours. Books are good. But experience is king when it comes to fatherhood. So let's move on to some other subjects here. Let's go into like aftercare once the baby's actually born. What kind of things did you guys kind of learn the hard way, and like what were some things that you'd want some dads to know moving forward after the birth?
Oh man, so that's actually a really good question. So when he was first born, and I think I've said this before, every guy on this planet, I don't care how rough and tough they are, a child softens you. And you go from being, I don't care if I got cancer, to, oh my God, is this kid breathing? Like you will sit there and listen to your child breathe. You listen to every noise they make, and you kind of become an instant hypochondriac because you're responsible for someone else's life. And it has you at this alert state. You're already stressed. You're already tired. So Ainsley, one of the best things she said to me was go get sleep, because I had a breaking moment. Unfortunately, I just mentally, I'd been up for I don't know, almost 36 hours. And I was just exhausted because I had some other stuff going on. And she made me sleep. And thank God that she got the nurses to help. And that's another thing. If you have nurse stations that are willing to help and watch the baby, make them come to use them. Do not be afraid to ask for that help.
Absolutely.
If pride comes before the fall, let me tell you, you will be absolutely exhausted. So make sure that one of you has slept and take turns sleeping, and take turns taking care of the baby, because both of you exhausted does nothing. And that's what she was kind of pointing out to me, is if we're both exhausted, we're both not at our best, and we're likely to, make a mistake or to, not, fall asleep or do something that we don't want to do when the baby's, that fresh. But I guess that would be some of my advice. But as far as, aftercare, what would you say? What were some tips and tricks that really helped us? Bennett?
I don't know. It's honestly a blur. It really is. I feel like the hospital care, you lose track of time so easily. Like going back when I got home from the hospital, I looked back at pictures, and it was like, I looked back at when they bathed Bennett, and it was at 3 a.m. And I had no idea, but I was like, why would you come in my room at 3 a.m. to bathe my baby? Like, let me sleep. But every so hour or so, they have to come in, and it was check my vitals, give my meds. An hour later, give Bennett do his vitals. And then another hour later, it was something else. So it's very continuous coming in and coming out the door, and it's exhausting. But you rest when you can, you ask for help when you can. If you have help, that would be wonderful. Like I had my mother come in for 10 hours and I said, Justin, go home, go shower, go change your clothes, do whatever you need, go cut the grass,
Love you, Val.
do something that allows you to regain your perspective and like regain your identity. Because for me in the hospital, we were only there for like a day or two because we chose to come home a day early. But it was, you lose kind of sense of time, you lose sense of yourself. You really just, not on top of the, drugs and all of that stuff. It's hard to just kind of be in that moment and in that wave. So, I mean, we'll get into all the books and stuff, but I read all the books beforehand. When that baby comes, your brain cells are done. Like you don't remember anything you read. I just remember him crying, and I looked at the nurse and I was like, what do I do? Just like either feed him or hold him or rock him or swallow him, do something. But like I forgot everything, and I had to kind of just go with the flow and do it.
That made me think of something. So the proper tools for the job is absolutely paramount. Like, and this is going to sound crazy, but knowing about nipple shield sizes can keep the baby from messing up your wife's nipples and causing them pain and not being able to feed them. Knowing about backups for formula and things like that, because some babies can't take breast milk or something's going on with the mother and they can't get the breast milk. Definitely call on the right tools. Swaddles. Learning how to swaddle is an MFer, man. Let me tell you, it's not easy, but you'll learn it in the hospital. But have a swaddle that has a zipper or that has Velcro, because let me tell you, that right there in the first few days is going to be a lifesaver for you guys. You're not going to sit there and fumble with the baby. It's just bop, 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 done. And I promise every second counts.
I feel like too,
exhausted. The
main thing that I can tell fathers that I really pushed him to do, and he was kind of angry with me a little bit. But like every time the nurse came in, I was like, watch her change that diaper, help her change that diaper. Let her watch you change your first diaper. Teach her, like, learn how she's swaddling. You swaddle the next one. And so, like, one time I was like, Justin, wake up and you change the diaper. He was like, I'm too tired. I said, well, there's no better time than now. Like, you have someone to teach you how to do it. You have someone to teach you, say, hey, you're tucking this corner in wrong. You're not wiping them right, or you're not tightening the diaper enough. Like, I really pushed him because I couldn't get up after my surgery. I couldn't really sit very much. So I relied on someone to hand me the baby. But it was, this is your time to learn and have someone observe you while you learn. Because I'm a very hands-on learner. You can tell me 18 times. Until I actually do it, I won't know what I'm really, really doing. So that was very, very beneficial, because by the time we got back home, Justin was like ready to roll. He was good. Like I feel like he learned so much, and he appreciated that push, because he would have never done it without it.
Yeah, you got to suck it up, Buttercup. That's just
how it is. What about you, Dustin? What's some afterbirth tips or some stories or experiences that you had? Like, how did y'all utilize resources and that kind of thing?
We found a doula, which is a birthing specialist that we really liked. They can be low cost or free depending on where you look. So it's not, some crazy luxury thing. They're available through a lot of different hospitals and different, organizations. And they help with the birthing process. When there's a C-section, they can't help that much. So unfortunately, we didn't really get to use it for that. But afterwards, it's really important for the health of a marriage that you don't try to do it all yourself. I know a lot of parents during COVID said, we don't want to have anyone around. We want to keep the baby, from getting sick. We don't want to, everything was going on those couple of years, and it destroyed a lot of marriages. You want to test a marriage, try 6 months with no sleep and no help. It's just not reasonable, to try to do that. And Brandon, you're a better man than me. It's a tough scenario. So We had an unbelievable, we had a lot of help from family. You know, they were great. We had friends. And so we had a lot of resources already, but we still felt that talking to a professional about this was the best way to go. And she was incredible. So we did probably 10 different sessions with her where we talked about everything from sleep schedules to, you know, basically anything. She was on call. You know, we'd call her and say, hey, we don't know what the heck to do. How do we help with this? And she would say, well, I think this is what I would do, or let me contact one of my colleagues, and the whole, you know, doula center would be available. So that's a resource I would highly recommend. I think they're available to up after maybe 6 months afterwards. And they're just excellent. You know, they're specialists in this kind of stuff. So, you know, reach out, find resources, you know, as Justin said, you know, as a father, take that time to yourself, because it's not selfish to take a little bit of time, you know, and keep your mental health where it needs to be. It's a very trying time. I know it was the most emotionally unstable I've ever been in my life was around that time, and mostly from lack of sleep. You know, I'm pretty good usually by getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night, and so going months on end, you know, with very minimal sleep was just not something that I was ready for, and it was really, really tough. So having someone to lean on and talk to about that kind of stuff is something I would highly recommend for everyone. It really made a difference there. So it's DOULA as a doula. They like medulla oblongata. So they do everything. They'll do a little bit before. Their real specialty and where people know doulas from is during the birthing process itself. They're birth coaches. They talk to you about breathing. They help, you know, do some of the stuff, you know, teach the dad what to do, that kind of thing. And then afterwards, they're a great resource there as well. So that's the biggest one I'd recommend. The other one, I read a book called Dude, You're Going to Be a Dad. Fantastic read. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but very funny, tongue-in-cheek. Written by a guy who could have been a stand-up comedian. I mean, he's absolutely hilarious. Does a really nice job of keeping it light. It's short. You know, it's not long-winded like me. He gets right to the point. You know, he really, you know, it's maybe 100 pages. And it nails down exactly what a dad can do to help his wife and to keep his sanity and to you know, make sure his kid is happy. It's very hard as parents to remember that if you you know, are struggling and are really having a tough time, that's not good for your baby, right? So we all want to sacrifice and do what's right for the baby, but at the end of the day, we have to do what's right for each other and for the relationship. And the baby's important, but it's not everything. And you know, that seems obvious until you get into it. And 3 months in, and you're like, we haven't done anything for each other. This is, you know, this is brutal. So anyway, those are the two pieces of advice I would give.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We did not read that book, and I wish we did.
Yeah.
Or he did.
Give it a quick glance. Yeah. You know, not too late.
Yeah.
I have to say that the resources thing is such a huge and pivotal thing. Like, we did not have basically any help with Benjamin, which was our first son, our first kid. And he had colic really bad. So constant reflux, constant, like he was awake. He would feed every hour and a half. And one of the biggest issues we had was breastfeeding. And man, just let if your wife is like, man, I can't do this, don't push her to breastfeed. Just let her do
just free the nipple, man. You got to do it.
Well, just let her, you know, one, obviously utilize the resource of a lactation specialist. They regardless if you're doing breastfeeding or not, they can help with, you know, coming down from the milk kind of thing. I mean, there's all kinds of benefits that they have for your wife. So lactation specialist is one of the ones I would add to the list besides a doula or, you know, a good side doctor there. But if it's too hard on your wife, just formula feed. But I mean, obviously that's a decision. Again, you want to discuss with your wife beforehand, and just in case, you know, you got to know that sometimes that doesn't work out for some women and sometimes it does. And so, you know, don't make it harder on your wife if you can. I think the other thing, postpartum depression, that is something that I think dads really, really need to keep an eye out for. Your wife's hormones are the most imbalanced they'll ever be in their entire lives during this period right after birth. And so, yes, they're going to be way more emotional. Even if they're not postpartum depressed, they're still going to be more emotional. They're going to be more sensitive. And that's a normal process. And you have to support them through that. So as far as depression is concerned, like my wife dealt with it severely. And so we had to get her, to a doctor almost immediately. And it's such a huge thing to be prepared for. But other than that, those are the two things I would say is, keep an eye on your wife's mental state and well-being.
Absolutely.
And your own.
Yeah. I mean, you can't charge
no
somebody
good
else's
somebody.
battery if you're on E yourself. So the
Yep.
self-care thing is really important. But like we didn't have sleep with Benjamin. We went 6 months without any sleep or help, and we would wake up. I think we got 3 hours of sleep a night, and it was broken up from feedings. And literally that 6 months felt like a week, because it was just like, man, team no sleep blur, just complete deprivation.
You brought up a good point. Watch for the signs. And so I noticed, and before she even noticed it, I noticed her signs. She's always been a rock star about not being tired. Yeah, she's not a morning person, I can tell you that. But she can get up and just rock out anything going on in her world. That being said, she was always tired. She was just sleepy all the time. She wasn't her normal self.
Which
and then
is normal in
that
that sense of life. But
you need to watch out for things that they say or do that are out of the norm, because she said a few things to me that I was like, wait, what? And then they're going to give pushback. I don't want to go get help. It's embarrassing. It's, make them go get the help.
Right. You got to advocate for them.
I will say, I guess I kind of felt like I might have been in that spiral, but it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow and really be like, yeah, maybe I am a little depressed. Maybe I am a little anxious. But I think it was about 4 weeks postpartum. I feel like we had Bennett's baptism, and we had all of Justin's family in town. We had 8 people staying over here. We had a big baptism party, everyone in and out. And it was just like, pass the baby, pass the potato, throw him to mom when it's time to eat, throw him to mom when it's time for a diaper change. And that was like my breaking point. I lost all cahoots. And that's when everybody was like, whoa, and so I called my doctor that next day. And the main thing that they told me that was the most helpful is, whether you are postpartum depressed or not, or anxious or anything, or on that cusp, was you have to be communicative with your spouse. So I felt like and it was nothing against Justin did wrong, but I was doing everything for Bennett, and Justin was super, super hands-on. I mean, he was a 50-50 parent for sure, but I go take a bath, and not even 3 minutes later, someone needed me. Justin needed me to teach him, do something, help with something. Bennett started crying. It was time for Bennett to eat. It was time for Bennett to change his diaper. So I never had like my space. So it was always like, Ainsley, the baby's crying, or, hey, what do I do? So I never got to shut my brain down on just give me 30 minutes of shut eye or take a long shower. It never happened. And so that was one of my, one of the PAs at the doctor's clinic that I go to. She's a good friend. She called me that Sunday, and she said, it is so important for you to say, Justin, the next hour is for you alone. I need to go for a walk. I need to go take a shower. I have got to step away from the baby, or it's not good. So that was super, super powerful. I feel like from that moment on, it was very, very awesome. Justin was very, he's always been present, but it was more so he knew if I said, give me my time, I'm done.
Yeah.
He stepped up.
Your microphone, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but your microphone is phasing out there. You guys might want to move it or try to fix it there.
Okay.
But yeah,
I don't know anything about tech. I have no.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. So while we're working on that, I'll go over the statistic on postpartum. So I'm looking at the MGH Center for Women's Mental Health. It's a reproductive psychiatry resource and information center, and they say that between 50 and 85% of new mothers experience a brief postpartum period of tearfulness and anxiety, termed the maternity blues. But 10 to 15% of those women experience postpartum depression, or PPD, which is the longer and more pervasive type, which is also the more dangerous type, because that's the kind where women, God forbid, they commit suicide or they harm their baby. So if it gets bad enough. But if you catch in early stages, it's completely treatable with medicine and therapy and all these other things. So it's really important. Like I can tell you from experience, my wife was literally weeping for hours and hours and hours on end with our second child. And I knew immediately that it was PPD. And so we called her OBGYN. The OBGYN took care of everything, got a psychiatrist and all that stuff. And she ended up on medicine for a full year. The psychiatrist recommended a full year of medication. And now she's perfect. And, one of the things that she was thinking was she's so fearful that it was permanent because she's never had that experience before. She's been always this bubbly, super happy person. But she was super scared that it was just going to be a permanent thing. And I can assure you, ladies, it's not. It's just a temporary thing. Medicine can fix it. And then your body will fix the rest of it once your hormones start leveling out. So, but yeah, Ainsley, I thought that was a beautiful point. Self-care and self-time. Like I call it mommy time. So like I would draw Summer up a bath. I could tell when she was stressed. I'd say, look, I got everything. You go take care of yourself. I'm going to do all the house stuff, the logistics, the bills, the kids, all of that. You just take some time to yourself because that, again, that is important. And then us dads, we have to do the same for ourselves, especially if we have to still go to work. We're juggling the mom recovering. We're juggling the baby because, dads don't get leave like moms do sometimes, unfortunately. And so, yeah, it's a tough juggle for both parents for sure. And it's so important to help encourage and embrace each other and communicate with each other. I can't stress that enough. The communication was the only thing that got me and Summer through it because, man, I'm telling you, those first 6 months with Ben was like, whew, man, I don't even like thinking back to it. It's like, it was just rough, but it's one of those things you get tested and it's the juice is worth the squeeze. I mean, I could never imagine my life without either one of my kids, like ever. They're so worth, I would do it all over again in a heartbeat.
You talk about time. So for us, yeah, I mean, the way she described it, I do a lot of the diapers. Don't get that wrong. But there are times when that baby's new and it is still suckling from the teat. I don't have those. So as a father, you need to understand, you need to plan around that timing. One, and two, for me, I thought I would throw up or I'd be like, 4 Christmases, Vince Vaughn, just, but thank God I was not. Cause before when I saw my brother's kids, I was like, oh my God, what is that? With my own son, I have had no issues. I'm the first to dive in and change his diaper because he's super cute and he's funny when you do it.
And we love poop diapers now. Like it's like a celebration.
I don't know about that.
Yes, you do.
No, but here's another thing. I have had some friends, and please don't take this in the wrong context, but I've literally had a friend of mine tell me, it's 3 a.m. in the morning, my kid starts screaming, I want to kill myself. And I'm like, dude, what?
That's gonna get blues.
I get that, but you need to take that and turn it into excitement. Anxiety and fears can be turned into excitement if you think about them in the right perspective. You need to remember, as a father, this is your only time you will ever get with this as a baby. This child is a baby. You will never get to hold them after you're gonna blink and they will be, hey, Dad, what's up? Or a girl in high school going to prom and you're ready to kill some 16-year-old. But I'm just saying, you blink and life will go by you. So enjoy those moments. You're gonna feel like you hate them, but don't. Take in those moments. Love your baby, especially if you have a crying baby. We're fortunate. Our baby's not a big crier. He's always been smiley and happy. That makes it easier. But you need to stop and remember that this is the life that you chose to protect and have, and you need to be there for that baby because you're going to feel moments where you're like, this sucks, but you need to suck it up and realize that they depend on you. They love you unconditionally, and they're the only person in your life that will. And
your best is enough. I feel like that was a really big one for me. Just waking up, I would like kind of Summer, like your wife, Brandon, and I would just cry and I'd be like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And that was another thing. Someone else that had a baby a few weeks before me said, your best is enough. That is all that baby knows is your best. So just do it, provide him the proper, layout of how a day should be, provide him food, you're providing him shelter, you're doing more than 90% of the world by just being their mother. And that is very, or their father. And that's very powerful. Just do your best. And that's all the baby knows. They don't know an outside world from what you give them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can kind of go, we spoke a little bit of, I'm sorry, Dustin, you want to go?
Oh yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, babies are incredibly resilient. Their brains, are designed to handle, as long as they're not experiencing major trauma, I mean, if you got parents who, are doing something they shouldn't be doing with their kids, and that's a different story. But absolutely, as Ainsley said, your best, and what your best is, is enough. So, as long as you're hitting those minimums, if you miss a day of Mozart, it's going to be okay. A lot of intelligence and all that is kind of what that kid is going to be.
Absolutely.
So, if you're beating yourself up over, your weird plan to make them a baseball player by the time they're 7, Justin,
not me.
Got him.
Yeah, that's right.
That is so honest.
But another thing, your wife can pump and you can be the guy at night. If your son or daughter needs to be fed, stick some milk in the fridge. You can also, Lucas drank milk from like 3 different moms. You can milk share. That's there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's groups that offer that. Some moms produce insane amounts of milk and they have to pump extra that their children won't be able to drink because they just produce too much. And if they don't get rid of it, express it, they'll be in pain. So there's all this extra milk available. And I think part of the reason he's a big, strong kid is because he got a bunch of different mom's milks. I don't know, man.
Well, we had a regular old moo cow over here. Dude, she went to the doctor and it was like 3 times what she should have been doing. It was funny as hell.
I was pumping for triplets, essentially. So
she was. So you didn't know any better.
You should donate.
Give it to breastfeeding at 4 months old, and we're almost 8 months, and we just finished our breast milk.
Okay.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But we
supplement with formula too. So I mean, it helps.
No, but it's a great thing.
It is.
And
so, but on the other side of that, there are moms that have issues with lactation, and so like they were forced to go to formula. And I can tell you right now, one of the best investments. It was a little bit more on the expensive side. But it was one of the best investments we ever had. Was called a Baby Brezza. Brezza. Literally, you put a bottle up to it, you push a button, how many ounces it is, and it automatically
it's a formula Keurig.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Yeah.
Warms
it's a
the water.
Lifesaver.
Man. And doctor.
So we just use that.
Right. And so one of the other things that we use to prevent the colic, other than medicine, I think we had to use ranitidine, but then it got recalled. But was Dr. Brown's has a specific bottle with like a tubing that prevents air from when they're suckling on the bottle, and that prevents the colic. So if your kid's experiencing colic or they're bottle fed, the Baby Brezza and Dr. Brown's bottles, I'm telling you, they're lifesavers. So invest in those for sure. For
sure. That's actually something we were going to suggest. It's the
Dr. Brown's. So that is a really good point to bring up, because the first week of life, I went see, we have a lactation consultant and like speech and language pathologist that works with our clinic a good bit. And so I ended up going to see her, and I was like, I just need to figure out what's going on, what I'm doing wrong. And like Justin said, flange size was a huge one, because all the companies that send you pumps and send you everything, they send you the 2 generic sizes that fit maybe 30% of the population. So that kind of really, really messes you up. What a flange size is, it's a part of a pump or any kind of apparatus that helps like draw milk that is supposed to fit like your boob or nipple size, essentially. So the standard one comes like a big size, and it shows you how they're supposed to fit, but you really you think you're doing it right, and you really aren't. And it really causes so much pain and havoc that it's like kind of hard to get back from. So that was really nice for us, but where was it going with that?
I'm talking about
the bottles. So my sister used 𝐬𝐒𝐇 with her babies, and they loved them and they did great. So that's what I bought. And I said, oh my gosh, this bottle looks like a boob. It's very round with like a little nipple. And I was like,
I was using them at the gym. I was like, man, this is crazy.
I said, this has to be the best bottle. It looks the most like a boob. And then I think there's a nano baby that looks very, very similar.
Yeah.
And
does.
so when I went to the lactation consultant, she was like, that is what's wrong with kind of not social media, but just advertisements and all these things, because they're saying it looks like a boob. It's the best bottle, but there's no, like Brandon said, there's no apparatus inside that helps draw out that air. And actually, she said the more narrow the nipple, the better, because you want the baby to like basically suckle down all the way to the cap and not just take just the nipple, because that's how they'll emulate it on your body. So that was like a really big kind of like, whoa, never would have known this, never would have thought this. I thought I was doing the best thing by getting a boob-shaped bottle, but little did I know that was like actually horrible.
Yeah.
For us at least. And like I said, my sister used 𝐬𝐿 and loved it. I have other friends that use Babe and they love it. But I feel like the Dr. Brown's narrow nipple bottle has been so life-changing for us and a lot of our friends who kind of had the same issues. So that was a really good point, B.
You can get the matching pacifiers that match what the bottle nipple looks like, and it's comforting to them. And I'm telling you what, the second you pop that in, baby's chill. It's been the greatest. At least ours was, thankfully. And now he still uses them. It's his, his little passy thing. But we'll kind of go. I guess, do you want to go into the passies? Or you want to go into the books first? It's up to you. Unless y'all have something else.
Oh, B, you're muted.
I was going to say, let's go into the pacifiers, especially since Ainsley's a pediatric dentist. So I think there's some other benefits to pacifiers, but I would like her and you to kind of discuss what those benefits are.
For sure. And another thing, I guess, about pacifiers that was kind of confusing, and I didn't really realize, but in the hospital, a lot of the lactation consultants there want you to not give them because they don't want to cause nipple confusion between pacifiers and nipple, and that's makes sense for sure. But again, I think that's a very A versus B conversation. Some lactation consultants would say they're going to know. They're getting milk out of one, they're not getting out the other, and then others will say that. So that's kind of a confusing. Do as you kind of think. We softly gave it in the hospital, but Bennett was a very good feeder from the beginning. But that's a big thing is I feel like for us getting so many different pacifier types. Like we went to the hospital with 𝐴𝐕𝐷. We went to the hospital with MAMS, I think it's called. All these different things. And he didn't take so many different kinds because they just weren't comfortable to him, essentially. So he took the MAMS at the hospital for the first 3 weeks of life. And a lot of, of our friends have that. And then we kind of switched to more nipple-based pacifiers like the 𝐴𝐕𝐷 or the Dr. Brown. So like Justin said, that's just what our baby took to. And I feel like every baby kind of has their preference.
Yep.
So it is beneficial to get like 3 or 4 different brands. I know financially it's not the most ideal, but it's very nice to just kind of find that comfort zone for your child to have that. But a few things that we kind of did research on and I've kind of studied and learned that pacifiers do in fact help prevent SIDS. I'm not entirely sure the scientific basis of it, but there's a lot of research on that, that it really does help, reduce the risk of SIDS. And
for you new fathers out there, if you don't know what SIDS is sudden infant death syndrome. And it is a very real thing, unfortunately. And it is, they have not figured out the cause for the reason sometimes this happens. But a baby just passes away either in their sleep, their crib, or for no reason at all. And like I said, there's no scientific reason for it. So for some reason, like she was saying, these pacifiers can help with that. So that's one of the big factors.
It's imperative to note too, like you don't force feed your child to take a pacifier, thinking that it is going to prevent all of these things that can happen. It's, in the beginning of life, Bennett didn't want to take a pacifier, and then he did, and then he became a thumb sucker, which is another topic.
She hated that.
Yeah, like it is so hard to take this away from your child when you can throw the pacifier in the trash can when they get older. So when I started to see signs of this and going to sleep with his thumb and waking up in the middle of the night and sucking his thumb was when I really started putting the pacifiers in his crib and saying, like, grab at your disposal, do what you need, but don't go to the thumb. Because it is a very, very, very hard habit to kick. I have a lot of patients who do have this habit, and it can go into not adulthood, but adolescent age. I mean, there's some 8 and 10-year-olds that are still sucking their thumb and really have a desire to not. But it's a subconscious comfort zone that is hard to break. So in those regards, I do really recommend that. And it does help, the growth of the jaws and all of that. If you can imagine sucking on something all day, every day, your jawbones are strong. I mean, think of like a little alligator, like they just chomp and your muscles are stronger than you think. And it does prevent your face from growing and your jaws from, going in proper alignment. So it is pretty imperative.
Dustin, I know you know quite a bit about SIDS.
I do. So Elon Musk's son died of SIDS. It's more common than you'd think. There's certain risk factors for it. If the mother was exposed to narcotics, it gets into the child's bloodstream, and so their respiratory drive drops. They're more likely to die of SIDS. Babies who sleep on their belly when they're very young are also more likely to die of SIDS, which is why they always recommend let your child sleep on their back. It's hard because they're more comfortable on their belly. I know for the first couple months of his life, Lucas, all he wanted to do is flip onto his belly. But literally on the swaddle, it says back is best. So it yells at you. I'm sure you guys have the same thing. Do not let your child sleep on their belly because that's another risk factor for SIDS. Very premature children are also at much higher risk. So basically, if your child had any complications during the process, they're probably more likely to have SIDS. And so you should be a little more careful about it. The thing to consider is it is a relatively rare thing. And if you don't sleep at all because you just want to stare at your baby the whole time and make sure they're not, stop breathing, you're going to drive yourself crazy. At some point you have to outsource that, allow yourself to sleep. And there's a couple different options for that. The owlette is a great one. It's a little pricey is the only issue. It's a couple $100, so it's a bit of an investment. But it's a pulse oximeter. So it pretty accurately tells you what your child's blood oxygen level is. And if it drops below a certain amount, it'll alarm you, wake you up. And it's definitely been shown to save some lives. So it's a worthwhile investment. But it's really hard. There's not, like any kind of help with paying for that. So if you don't have a couple $100 lying around, I get it. There are some cheaper monitors that monitor respiratory rates. We use something called a 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄, 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄. That was great. It uses a camera to determine what your child's respiratory rate is. And it can tell pretty accurately if your child has stopped breathing. We definitely got some false alarms. So I woke up at 3 a.m, thing yelling at me, hey, your child stopped breathing. I went in there. He was fine. He may have stopped. I don't know. But so those were like $50. That wasn't bad. And you can watch your child on your phone while they're sleeping, which is kind of a nice perk to that. So the 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄 was kind of what we used. We had an owlette as well. It was kind of a pain to just keep putting it on his foot every night. So we stopped using it after a few months. But it just depends on your level of comfort and, how careful you want to be. So all kind of, good options there. But, bottom line with SIDS, if your child had any kind of difficulty during the birthing process, they're probably at a little bit higher risk of it. So it's important to, to be extra vigilant with that. It's 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄. Is the one we used. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah. And similar to the 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄, we have the NANET system, which is a camera system, and it's pretty affordable. It's a few $100s as well, but I believe you can get it on sites like Amazon where you can do credit and things like that. So if you're financially just in a place you can't afford a lot, especially with a baby, I know how expensive they are. It's definitely a great place to go and get one. But Nanit has a swaddle that you can put on your baby that has like these little squares and triangles on it, and it can read your baby's breathing patterns. It can learn your baby's breathing patterns to sleep.
Okay.
And it alarms you if something's
it's
off.
a little extra cost, but it's like maybe $25 for the swaddle, but it has like some black and white shapes that your camera kind of focuses on, and it can monitor how like their breath
is working. But
yes.
So
the workload.
I would say
and you can do dual. So that's a really big thing. If you're looking for multiple kids and everything, it's a dual split screen. You can have multiple monitors on one app, and it can can do, which is really, really nice.
And actually,
we didn't do the breathing things, but it is
shameless plug.
Oh, that's pretty sweet. Yeah.
So
it's wonderful.
You can put it on multiple devices.
And you can spy on your babysitters.
Yeah. That's so it shows the temperature of the room, which is awesome because that's very important for the first few months, especially humidity in the room. We're in Louisiana, so it's humid as heck. We don't even need a humidifier. You can talk to the baby through the app without having to move. You can play noise. You can turn on a light. You can do a number of different things. My favorite thing, and shamelessly, I'll say this: I love taking the videos and things, the memories, and saving them, because there's memories where she's going in and kissing them, or I'm going in and grabbing them, cuddling them, and it's just nice little extras you get from it. But the owlet, for sure, I would 100% suggest to anybody, because when he got RSV, I was in Chicago, and thank God we had invested in this because we were watching his oxygen levels. He got down to 90. And if you're not very familiar, if you go below 90, it's about time to start going to the ER with your child. Normal adults, 95, something around there. Or Dustin, you're the anesthesia or the nurse anesthetist.
100 is a normal.
Well, yeah, no, I'm saying when you're extremely sick. And it's
sure. Yeah. Under 90 is a good, under 90 is a good point. Whereas in adults and children, you start.
I just want to make sure I was correct in saying that. But
of course.
It was awesome because it let us know, hey, there's something going on. And
I feel like it caught both of his illnesses before, like the 2 days before, his heart rate really was high. And Justin was like, whoa, why is his heart rate 198 or something like that? It was like super, super high. And it was really concerning. And I contacted our pediatrician. He said, look, sometimes these things, which is a great thing to talk about as well, is they can be more of a scare than they really are. There can be some outliers and there could be some things that go on, but his heart rate was super, super high. And then 2 days later, he got a runny nose and a cough. He had RSV. Then the next time he got COVID, and then it really kind of like helped us.
It let us see. And when I say, I mean, his heart rate maybe jumped to 200 once or twice for about a minute. And it was pretty terrifying because I know your heart rate's not supposed to go that high, even as an infant. We were kind of studying it before we called our pediatrician, and 180, 190 is about top where you should feel comfortable with a baby.
It's even pretty high,
and that's still high, And so when we saw that, we were like, oh God, what's going on? So having an outlet, put us at
it actually caught my niece's seizure too.
Yeah, it did.
My niece had a seizure at 1 year old, and her owlet went off, and they went in the room, and they had to call the ambulance and everything. I mean, she's great. She's perfectly fine. She just had like a little febrile seizure, but it caught it when her oxygen couldn't.
Wow. So now that we've gotten into white noise and monitors, let's talk about sleep schedules and like our sleep. There's a couple different sleep styles. So do you guys like let them cry it out, or do you go in there and assist them? How do y'all? Let's talk about that.
Dustin, you can take that one first, bud.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and this is right from our doula. Are you guys getting some feedback?
Okay. Yeah, it's Justin's speaker.
Yeah. So you can't spoil an infant, right? Is a really important thing that I think a lot of fathers, we want to be tough. I'm not going to have a wimpy son, so I'm going to discipline him and make sure that, he does the right things. That's not the right attitude with a 3-month-old. we think of them as adults, right? Because the way they're behaving might drive us crazy because they're crying or they're being, they're doing something you don't want them to do. You have to remember though, that this is a partially formed brain, right? Yeah, there you go. Exactly. You really can't, if there's nothing else you take away, from this, and you cannot spoil an infant. You can spoil a 5-year-old. You 100% can.
That's for sure.
But for that first year of that baby's life, you can't spoil them. So I think it's called the Ferber method, right? The cry it out concept. Everything that I've read is very much against that. And if that's how you were raised and how you raise your children, there is obviously, it's up for debate. I'm not going to say you're a bad parent or anything, and please don't take it that way. But my personal understanding of all the newest research being done on this is that the cry it out method is not the best thing for your baby. If your baby is crying, you should go comfort them. If your 9-year-old is crying, you don't need to, they're 9, right? So it's age dependent. So it's very hard because a lot of us are taking this and going, oh, well, I'm spoiled, I'm taking care of my infant. I'm going to, go to them whenever I need it. And then it just doesn't stop, right? At some point, and we can talk about this later, you have to transition to where the type of parenting you do is different. That's really hard for a lot of moms and dads, right? They're either the type that's a little too tough on their kids or they're a little too lenient. And it's hard for us to adjust kind of one way or the other. So just rule of thumb, if they're under 1-year-old, you cannot spoil them. Go hold them, go hug them. If as a dad or a mom, you feel, a lot of people doing the cry it out methods, it's so hard. It took everything I could to not go comfort the baby, but I know it's the right thing to do. There's a reason it was so hard and it felt wrong to do that, because it's wrong. Go hug your baby. They're sad. Go comfort them. It's okay.
Well, I agree to a point. There's different cries. If they're screaming bloody murder and it's a for real cry or a nightmare cry, go comfort them. Or they're hungry. You can tell when they're hungry. If it's a cry because, hey, come see me. No, don't give in, because the second you do, they're not going to be able to start. You're going to start holding them. They're not going to sleep unless you're holding them. And that's where we kind of had a little bit of a difference. We let them cry it a little bit. Well, to a point, not like,
I feel like we didn't I had a friend who did the cried out and they let him cry for like 45 minutes, went outside, turned the monitor off. And to me, that was like, I would have lost my cahoots. Like I could have never done that. We kind of took a bunch of different books recommendations on what was beneficial and appropriate for your child's age. So it might be, I think it was a week and a half in when Bennett was born. I fed him every hour from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. in one day. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot do this. And I realized I was just, he cried, I nursed. He cried, I nursed. I didn't let him figure it out a little bit in a say. So we never let him cry it out, but you kind of let them figure it out a little bit on their own. Like instead of being like, he's crying, we didn't jump to it. We kind of said, let's give him a minute. Yeah. Give him 45 seconds. He's 2 weeks old or he's 4 weeks old. Let's give him 45 seconds and see what happens. And most of the time he went back to bed.
You don't want to create a cluster feeder. You have a cluster feeding baby because you go and you ta-ta them every 10 seconds.
And that's what I was creating at first.
Let me tell you, that is your worst nightmare. Yeah. You will never sleep. You will both be exhausted and you're both going to lose it eventually. So don't allow yourself to create a cluster feeder. See, there's a fine line between letting them cry it out in a bad way and letting them cry it out in a good way. And then going and being supportive.
Time that's appropriate.
There's a time that's appropriate when it's you go and ta-ta them or you go and hold them and comfort them. And you're going to know as a parent, most of us instinctually know and hear, and especially the longer the time goes on, you're going to understand certain cries and certain sounds mean different things. Your baby will communicate with you whether you realize they are or not.
But it does take a while to understand what that is. So it took me a very long time to understand what he actually needed. But I think it is very important to note that the first 2 weeks of life, and every book I read said the first 2 weeks of life is on demand. Whatever your child needs, you give them. Do not try and get them sleeping. Do not just wake them up, teach them night versus day, and feed your child if they need. Sorry, but it's crying. And so that was important. So cluster feeding is every little sound your baby makes, you give them a feed, and you 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 kind of just only feed on demand, or you feed on cry, rather than kind of using. And that was one of the books, What to Expect When You're Inspecting. I'll kind of jump into that.
Mhm.
I read that one while I was pregnant. I feel like that is the blanketed book that everybody reads. Let me turn this down. Hold on. That was really beneficial when I was pregnant. It just kind of tells you a little bit of everything. And
Mhm.
it kind of does go out the window, but they go over the 3 different parenting styles. So there's a parent that follows the clock, which is, it says, the clock says 9, I got to feed. The clock says 12, I got to feed. The clock says 3, I got to feed. Every 3 hours, you're
Mhm.
doing your thing. And then there's another type of parent that, my baby's crying, I feed. No matter if it means dirty diaper or he's hungry or this. My baby's crying, I feed. My baby's crying, I feed. And then the beneficial parent style that they recommend is kind of merging the two, that your baby's crying. Why are they crying? Let's sit back and look. Is their diaper dirty? Read the clock. So like kind of mimic the baby's cry versus, is it time to eat, or did he just eat an hour ago? If he just ate an hour ago, chances are he's not hungry. He has a dirty diaper, or he needs a little bit of self-soothing. He needs help going down. And I feel like that was really, really beneficial, was to kind of merge the two. If he's
Sure.
crying and it's been 3 hours, he's probably hungry.
Hungry,
So
yeah.
feed the baby, and it's
Right,
kind of
right.
right in there.
See,
But-
we were the opposite of the let it cry it out. Like, we, especially with Ben having so many problems with colic and stuff, he just co-slept with us. And anytime him or Bela growing up cried, or they were scared or anything, they're with us or we're with them. Like, I can't tell you how many nights I fell asleep on Bela's floor next to her bed, or Summer did, or same for Benjamin. And that's because, like Dustin was saying, to me personally, I felt like I wanted to be there for my kid every second I can, and not let them cry it out or figure it out, because that kind of emotional regulation and those kind of things, to me, I can tell them that or teach them that in a later time, where they can actually communicate other than just crying. And yeah, there's different types of cries. So I think one of the biggest things is for dads is, when the baby comes out, man, start bonding with them, have physical touch with them, speak to him. So one of the things a lot of dads don't do is they'll just do this, but they're not talking to their kid. Look, man, look your kid in the eye, talk to him, say, hey, I changed your diaper so it doesn't hurt anymore. Even if it's like goo goo gaga, little baby talk, whatever. But that language, that kid's hearing it, and it's going to teach him language quicker. And it's also going to soothe him, and he's going to know your voice, or she's going to know your voice. And so
yeah,
it's a beautiful thing.
Narrate
but
your life. That's what they say. Narrate everything. I'm going cook. I'm going make your bottle. I'm going get water. Every little thing that you're doing should be told. And I think that's really, really smart, Brandon, because that was a big thing. And it helps your child trust you and know that you're there. And, you're teaching that communication. You're teaching them language, which is super, super imperative for them to start comprehending. I mean, whatever words go into their brain under X amount of age is how their brain is going to grow. If you do not speak to them, they don't hear language. They don't know. There's no capacity for their brain to grow. So narrate. I mean, I tell him everything. I sing when I'm going to take a shower. If he's watching me, I'm telling him I'm washing my hair. I mean, anything.
Yeah, if you call that singing, but
yeah, it's horrible. Still,
that's the biggest thing, is that the more you connect and bond with them, the more their brains grow in a healthy manner. Their pathways that they develop are much healthier. I think Jordan Peterson and a couple other psychologists talk about it, but like 0 to 4 or 5, those are the most pivotal foundational times of their lives in development. And if you're not giving them attention and love that they need, it's detrimental to their development, both physically, emotionally, and like just on a intellectual level. So it's super important. Love the mess out of your babies. You can never love them too much. And anybody that says otherwise is just completely ignorant. They don't know what they're talking about. You just ignore them and you love your baby. And look, trust your intuition. If you think something's wrong and you know your baby well enough to know their behaviors, man, don't risk it. Get them seen by a doctor. Go see somebody. And I mean, man, it's just so pivotal to know your baby and to bond with them off the bat. I can't stress that enough.
And no matter where you are or who you are, there are a ton of free resources available. You can spend a lot of money as a parent on, fancy gadgets and different stuff. I know I did. But everyone's on a different kind of budget. As far as specialists, different resources for speech, for psychology, for just about anything you need, there's almost always a free or reduced cost option, to help with that kind of thing. So reach out, do some research and look into it and feel free to ask any of us, if you need the information, because it is out there and it's available. And, a lot of times they got nothing to do. You'll call and they go, oh, I'm glad, I didn't have anything to do today. I'm happy to come out. And, there's, lactation consultants, there's specialists for every kind of kid thing you could imagine. Free nurses, all that kind of stuff. The states provide these resources for parents, and I think a lot of people just don't know about them, so they don't take advantage of them. So any weird problem you're having with your kids, Google it, and there's probably a specialist who's like, here you go, we'll come help you, or someone similar as far as that goes. Along those lines, one of the things we learned about was called sleep windows. So kind of like going by the clock, but you read your child's mood essentially, and there's 5 kind of key signs that your child is really sleepy and ready to sleep. They'll yawn. They'll be a little bit crabby or irritable. We've all seen kind of a sleepy, tired baby, and you've got a window. You've got about 10 or 20 minutes to get that baby asleep for their nap or their nighttime sleep, whatever it's going to be, before they rally. It's like a drunk guy that, gets his second wind. They're the same way.
Or his grilled cheese.
Yeah, he gets his grilled cheese and he goes. And when you miss that window, you're toast. The kid is going to be mad. He's not going to sleep. He's overtired, and you just wrecked your day, basically. So you have a window, and it won't always be at the same time. It won't always be at noon. It won't always be at 3 o'clock. Your kids' circadian rhythm changes, as they get older. So you got to be vigilant with seeing how your kid is behaving. And if you've got a really important game you have to get to, and, you can't possibly have time to take your kid to sleep, whatever it is, you got to, for those first couple months, schedule your life around that kid's sleep, because you will be very unhappy otherwise. If you have a good sleeper who's, sleeping pretty regularly, you're going to be a much happier parent than if you try to squeeze it in and go, oh, he'll figure it out, no big deal, and then we're just going to kind of live our life. It's you're setting yourself up for a very difficult couple of months. So those sleep windows are key.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think for me personally, you kind of hit on a point there. And if I'm being transparent, I think one of the hardest things for me was selfish time. And with Benjamin, it was so hard with lack of sleep. Like anytime you have your first kid, it's always going to be the hardest time in your life, or one of the hardest times. And it's because you've gone from this person who has to look after nobody other than your spouse and yourself, to you've got a precious little baby that is fully dependent on you. And it's like, you have to die to yourself. And the selfishness dies very abruptly. It's like going cold turkey on cigarettes or alcohol or whatever vice that you have. It's tough. It's mentally draining. So I think that's something we should maybe kind of dive into a little bit, is what specific things changed for you guys that was a tough adjustment when you had your first kids?
Yeah, I'll jump on that. So I'm big on hobbies. I would have 3 friends over 7 days a week if I could. I'm very much an extrovert. I love spending time with friends. And I, loved athletics, all that kind of stuff. So I knew I'm a big tennis player, have been my entire life, but I kind of told myself that's a sport that I'm not going to enjoy playing once a week. So I'm going to have to give that up. And I promised myself I'd still work out and, take care of myself in those regards. But as far as playing tennis, I like playing some video games. I said I'm going to have to give that up for a while. So I, at least for about a year, kind of didn't do much of that. So, a lot of those activities that I really...
You guys get to play video games?
That's ridiculous. Who would do that? Yeah, exactly. And these are activities that I didn't realize how much I missed. I was jonesing for some tennis. I wanted to go, I play Pokemon Go. I wanted to go catch some Pokemon because I'm a huge nerd. Exactly. Where's my Dragonite? And giving that stuff up was much more difficult than I had anticipated. You're absolutely right, Brandon. I never thought of myself as a selfish person, but as far as struggling with giving up that personal time, for my child, that 100% was me being selfish. And so one of the beauties is, as your kids get older, we got feedback on your end again. As your kids get older, you have a little more time, to engage in those hobbies and take care of yourself. But those are the big ones for me was giving up hobbies and not having those that time with my friends, that I used to have, and spending it with, my wife and my child instead. And I wouldn't give it up or anything, but it was tough. Those first couple months of that, it was a big struggle. It was a big adjustment. That was the big thing. I'd spent 37 years of my life being able to do whatever I wanted. I could run to Europe whenever I wanted to, no big deal. Yeah. And now, you could go once a year if you're lucky, but it might be once every other year. It's tough for sure.
Yeah. Man, I can't tell you, I was in a anxietous and depressive mood for months on end because you got this set schedule of dopamine and all the good stuff and, plenty of sleep to going to no sleep, stress, taxed out. And then on top of that, you're not doing the things you enjoy. You're doing the things that you have to do. So yeah, it's important to know that kind of thing is coming. But yeah. So what about you, Justin and Ainsley? What was something that was tough for you guys?
Let you take it first.
Yeah, I will say, especially as a mother, it was super, super hard in the beginning. I feel like you lose your sense of identity in a sense. Not saying it's any easier for fathers, because it is hard going back to work. 100%. It really is. I feel like dads feel like they're missing out on that, first little bit of bond, exposure and stuff like that. But there is something insanely difficult at being at home for 24 hours, being inside, being with one human being while your husband is at work. And you lose your sense of identity. I feel like that was the hardest thing for me. I had become a mother and that was it. I feel like I wasn't a wife in a sense. We didn't have very much time for ourselves to really get to have our bond and our movie time or whatever it was that, brought us together. I wasn't a physician anymore. I wasn't a friend. I wasn't a sister or an aunt or anything. I was a mother. And that was it for about 4 to 6 weeks, until I went back to work. And I went back to work pretty early. I started trickling in around 5 weeks because I needed to, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I feel like the day I stepped back into my office, motherhood became insanely easier for me. That was what was so hard for me, was losing my identity, losing everything outside of my world was gone. I was just a little mom in my house with my baby all the time. And that was hard. That was really, really hard. Yeah. And going to work, I got to, and it sounds so selfish, I forgot I was a mother. I forgot I had a baby back home waiting for me, but I got to have a little bit of outside exposure and friends again and me time and feel like I was back to normal. And I hate saying that because it kind of does sound selfish, but I feel like as hard as it is for a husband to go back to work, they do get that sense of themselves and their sense of space and all of that, as hard as it is. Because, you obviously aren't sleeping and napping. You're back at work early.
Sure.
Well, I'll say for me, let's just be real. I was in the car industry for years and years, and then I had to be back in it when he was born because I left Smith and Nephew and went to. I was working 12-hour shifts, so the car industry just sucks the soul out of you. So you just really don't care if you don't sleep, you have insomnia, you're stressed, you're constantly that way anyway. So it didn't bother me whatsoever. I was working 12-hour shifts. The only thing that sucked for me was not being present because Ainsley would send me a video of him doing something or a text saying, "Oh my gosh, you did this today," and I was just like, it made me upset. Like, I, honest to God, thought about walking out on that job multiple times.
Each piece of the puzzle's hard.
Yeah, that's just part of the sacrifice as a dad is, you got to be in most cases we're the breadwinner and we have to go out and we have to sacrifice our time, which is that's the most valuable thing that we have. And so it's really tough to adjust, especially when you've got your wife at home and your baby at home and you're missing out on all those things, all those pivotal moments. So yeah, let's move into a couple other areas here. Let's see here. So actually, let's do a brief overview of what we've talked about. So basically, get hands-on from the beginning, learn your baby's cues and behaviors. That way you can communicate and respond to them properly. Connect through touch and talking, kind of narrate everything to your infant. You can never spoil your infant too much. You can always just keep loving them as much as you can. Help your wife with every need that she has, including breastfeeding or bottle feeding, if that's the choice that y'all made. And make sure you have one-on-one time. Get the information and the resources you need for your wife and for yourself, whether it's through doctors, church, family, friends, whatever you need to get a little bit of break here and there. Maybe take a walk. Look after your relationship with your wife. That's a super important one because it's so hard to even give it any time. And it's kind of one of those back burners, unfortunately. And always look after yourself too, father. So self-care, super, super important. One of the things I wanted to kind of go over real quick is we're going to have another episode coming up in a few weeks. And I wanted to kind of go ahead and transition into that real quick. So our next book is going to be Endurance, and it's by an Alfred Lansing, and it talks about Shackleton's wild, and this is a true story, but it's the wildest story I've ever heard, and it's just about true human grit and leadership. They have a trip to Antarctic, and it's incredible. It talks about and shows what true leadership is in the face of adversity and the need of dire endurance. So, man, most incredible book I've probably ever read. That's a real story. So definitely going to be something we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss leadership and stuff. I wanted to give a quick shout out, Mr. Grant Gregory, great podcast. Love the messages. It's a rare gem. Thank you so much for the support, man. We love having other dads give us feedback. So feel free to drop in and give us any kind of commentary that you feel. Justin, you guys want to add anything before we kind of end the show tonight?
Yeah. Since you guys wanted to bust me out in episode 1, I'm gonna buy a word or a vowel. You were looking for the word Antarctica, not Antarctica.
Oh yeah, you got me.
And 2, we actually
fight.
had a few more things we want to cover. I'm gonna let Ainsley kind of.
I busted him out episode 1, by the way. I heard him in the bedroom, and I texted him. I said, "I think you misspoke."
Detrimental. Yeah.
It's like I don't think that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, moving forward, let's go to
2 quick little points. I know I talked about what to expect when you're expecting to read, like while you're pregnant, while you kind of have that downtime before a baby. The other really, really beneficial pieces of work that were helpful for us was Moms on Call. That was really kind of helpful for me, solely in terms they give you a layout of, let's say, 4 to 16 weeks or 8 to 16 weeks. It gives you kind of a basis guideline. It's called typical days. What would be your ideal day? And it gives you at 7 a.m. you feed, at 8 o'clock you play with them, at 9 o'clock you go to bed, you take a nap for ideally so amount of times. And then it kind of teaches you, like, this is ideal. If it doesn't happen this way, you shift and you adjust. And it gave us a basis of how to wrap around our days. And as he started growing and developing, each kind of leap or developmental milestone he hit, they kind of shift weights, they drop a nap, or they can stretch their wake window a little bit longer. So it was a really good thing for us. I literally just listened to it like on a podcast version, and I wrote out 4 to 6 weeks. Here we go. 8 to 16 weeks. This is what he should be doing, or how often he should be eating, or how often he should be napping, which was nice. And then my favorite piece of work, and it is 100% worth it. It was about $100, but it's called Taking Care of Babies. She is a ER nurse, and her husband is a pediatrician. And she goes through different little acronyms and things to kind of help you go along with, how to determine what your baby's needs are. And like Dustin said, is it healthy to let them cry? Some people will say yes. We didn't say yes in a sense, but we didn't say no in a sense. But it taught you what to do. So your baby cries. Rather than just turn the monitor off, it was sit back, observe for 2 minutes, see what that does. Go in his room, turn the sound machine up a little bit more. If that doesn't work, touch him, tap his little butt, rub his belly, do something that soothes him down and helps that. If that doesn't work, the B of sit back was put the binky in, put the pacifier in their mouth. If that didn't work, rock them, like rock their little belly or pick them up and rock them. And it goes through all these things to try. Now, if all these things fail, pick them up and feed them. If nothing is going to contain or help your baby, feed them. But it kind of helps you disassociate, cry, feed to sleep. You have to take a bottle. I have to drink to fall asleep, which was super, super imperative to us. I feel like that helped us have a 13-hour sleeper without having to sleep train, because we learned his cues a little bit. So I totally agree with Dustin in a major sense of that if your baby's crying, there's a need. They had a nightmare. They had this. Be with them. Like, show them that you love them. Even if it's walking in the door and saying, hey, mama's here. You can go back to sleep. You've got this. You don't have to touch them. You don't have to pick them up. You don't have to feed them. And that alone was super, super beneficial for us. And that's
great advice. Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely.
That was the greatest thing we read.
Yeah, and Ainsley, you did a nice job. Oh, go ahead, Justin. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Say.
Yeah, you did a nice job clarifying. Yeah, absolutely. If your baby cries, don't immediately jump up and rush, to their rescue. Absolutely, give it some time. What I meant was, when your baby is crying, within a reasonable amount of time, as you said, make sure you get there. But that's a very good point. If you're rushing every 3 seconds, to be at their beck and call, that's not good either. So there is definitely a healthy balance there. Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's also another healthy element, which is it is totally fine if you're at your wit's end and you're ready to have a mental breakdown or a breaking point, to lay your baby down safely in their crib, and you can walk away for a few minutes and take a walk. Take care of yourself if you have to. So that's kind of one of those outliers that a lot of people don't talk about. And something else that I don't think about it, that's really important for both dads and moms to do when they're expecting or have a new baby is you need to know CPR. And there are classes for baby or infant CPR, because it is different than a normal person, like a human adult CPR. Yes. Like Dustin's saying, it's half an inch, and the positioning matters on their chest as well. So it's super important. So yeah.
Yeah, positioning says, what does that say, Brandon? Since you're from Ole Miss, what does that say?
It's Tigers. Well, listen, since we're going there, Antarctic, let's go to that. You called me out on it, but it's actually an adjective relating to the South Polar region of Antarctica.
But that's not where he went. He went to Antarctica, buddy. I've read.
He went to the region.
The South Polar region of Antarctica, Justin. Oh my gosh.
Go to the South Polar region.
And we also live in a mare.
It is getting arctically cold in here.
Yeah, so I'm done. All right. So again, we're going to be reading Endurance with Alfred Lansing, and we're going to be discussing leadership. We might have a guest. We've got a couple options, and we're going to try to see if we can't contact a few of them, maybe have them come on. I've got a couple great ones in mind, so we'll see. But stay tuned. We'll give some updates. Any closing thoughts, Dustin, Justin, and you guys?
So we spent 90 minutes talking about how scary it is being a new dad. It's fantastic. It's such a joy. When your child at 2 a.m. needs you, there's no feeling like that in the world. When you're the only person in the world who can comfort that child, they're crying and you pick them up and they're happy. Oh, what a feeling. It is beautiful. There's nothing
you have a
like
purpose.
it.
You
have
feel
a sense
so
of
useful no
in
matter like how useless you feel outside of that. You feel so useful.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely. I did not mind staying late at work. Now I want to get home so I can see my kid. It's just, I mean, they are, it's a game changer. Yeah, you really do. It was a couple months after we first had Lucas. It was the first time we ever had a date by ourselves. And we went out. And the whole time we were driving, we're like, where's Lucas? I don't, it's all, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Just like, they're like a little virus that gets in your brain. It's all you think about. It's and it's beautiful and it's amazing. And I recommend it to everybody. I'm like a salesperson that's like, have you had a baby yet? You should do it.
This may be
it really is wonderful. Yeah.
This may be a little controversial for some, but we got our baby out early because we wanted to acclimate him to noise. We wanted to acclimate him to the being out in the public so that we could take him out. And now we can take him out and he's chill as a cucumber, man. He's just cool. And we get to take him on our dates and, do things that most parents can't do because we acclimated him to that. So
but we do have days without him.
Oh, obviously.
Yeah.
Our first date without the baby. Cried the whole time.
Yeah.
Cried the entire date.
I cried too
the whole time. I was just like, oh my God.
I was watching on the monitor. I'm like, I think he needs us.
I was like,
that was summer. That was summer.
Cocktails. If you go out on your first date, and if you're a drinker, like this guy, don't make the mistake of drinking too much. Because let me tell you, there is no worse feeling than getting up at 2:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, and 6:30 in the morning being hungover. It is hell on earth. Let me tell you.
And your child will sense weakness. They do. They're like they're vicious. They're like, you don't feel good, Daddy?
And then the night I was hungover, he's like, I was like, oh my God, dude, no. So yeah, I got too excited about date night. Let's just say that I had a little too many wine.
Yeah,
but it's fun, but make sure you make some time for you.
It's a great point though, Dustin. They are so worth it, man. And I feel like just over my small time on this earth, no good or great thing comes without suffering and challenges. And so children are that one of those things. I mean, you've got to suffer and you've got to get through the tougher things to actually enjoy it. I know. I'm tired, guys. You have to forgive me
My
here.
bedtime is 9 p.m.
Yeah, I'm about done. But yeah, let's end it, fellas and ladies. I appreciate everybody coming on and watching. If you have any further comments or anything, let us know on YouTube there. And just know that we'll be attaching some good links and some good resources for you guys to kind of read over and look over as new dads. And if you need anything, feel free to join our group on Facebook or post to us. We're more than welcome to help how we can. So with that,
subscribe.
Yeah, like that. So thank you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you can know when we go live next. Also be sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and our Discord channel. It's our desire to grow this fathership together and support dads out there. If you think this channel would be beneficial to someone you know, please share it with them. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode.